All right, today I'm going to film a video that I never know if I'm going to film each year because I'm really good at being in the know about what books are coming out, but I'm not very good at anticipating things. I don't know if that makes sense. But so usually in December and January, everyone's doing their 2024 anticipated releases. And here I am in February being like, yeah, I think I'm finally ready. I think we'll do it. And I have like a couple categories of releases that are on my radar, and this list can always evolve and change obviously as I learn more, but I have books that I'm excited about because they're by authors I've liked their works from before. I have continuations in series. I have books that I'm like, it could be okay, but I'm gonna wait to hear like reviews from people. And then I have some books that are just like, I don't know if I'm gonna like them or not, but I'm intrigued, and I try to make those like sci-fi or horror because those are the things I've been having more success with. Or like last year, I was just so out of the loop on science fiction books. I'm like, how do I find out what science fiction books are coming out and figuring out if I'll like them? And I'm still not sure how to figure out horror because I don't know how to learn about horror without learning too much about horror in terms of synopses, and I'm still learning my trope stuff in that genre. Regardless, we still have plenty of books to go through. I don't have the release dates written down. As far as I know, most of these are coming out within the first half of the year. You can always look on Amazon or Goodreads if you really want to know what the current date is, but these things are always in flux anyway. So even if I gave you a date, who knows if it'd even be true. So let's start with just like the books that are on this list, and I probably won't get to them, but I'm like keeping an eye out for people's thoughts and reviews because it could happen. So the first one is Mirror Heavens. This is by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is the third and I believe final book in Underneath Earth and Sky trilogy. So I read the first one, Black Sun, eons ago. I think it was 2020 when the first book came out. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. It was like a 3 to 3.5 star read for me. I tend to like Rebecca Roanhorse more the more brief she is. And this one, because it was long, it wasn't focusing on the stuff I wanted it to focus on, even though it was really nice to have a different world-building secondary fantasy world. And then I heard some very mixed reviews for the sequel, so I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to read the sequel, I need to know if this series sticks the landing. So that's why Mirrored Heavens comes out this year. It's on my radar, because if people are like, this was a really solid ending, then I might go through, reread the first book, read the second, etc. Because I didn't dislike the series at all, I just was apprehensive, especially because I only liked the first book. Another one is by P. Djeli Clark. This is The Dead Cat Tail Assassins. I feel like this is on like everyone's list. I mean, partially because of the cover and the title, I'm sure. There's a couple of things that make me apprehensive. One, again, kind of like Rebecca Roanhorse, I like P. Djeli Clark shorter. Novellas, short stories. The one novel I read, I wasn't like as huge a fan on the pacing, and I think this is a novel. And also Assassins. I've been burnt out on Assassins as like a trope, as like an institution. I'm not drawn to them. It's like one of my anti-buzzwords. So I'm nervous about this. One of my pro-buzzwords, cats, but I know there are no cats in this book. So based off reviews of people like say some of my personal buzzwords, like they really liked the characters, or if I start to hear things about the world that make me curious, I could be convinced to pick it up. Like I have liked his world building and his works before. It's just, I like it better for him in like novella form. So I don't know. And then the last one is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. I think this is another standalone. I think this is a standalone fantasy, unsure if it's contemporary or not. And I've only read 2 Leigh Bardugo. I've read Ninth House and I've read Hellbent, and I've liked both of those actually quite a bit. So I'm like cautiously optimistic that this could work for me, but I want to see reviews about what it actually like is and how it lands for people. Because I have a feeling this is going to be a controversial or contentious release in the Leigh Bardugo fandom. And I don't actually know where I fall, because I feel like a lot of people obviously like Ninth House and Hellbent. It gets really good ratings. It wins the Goodreads Choice Awards, but like on BookTube, it seems to be the lesser of the Leigh Bardugo works. So I'm not sure. So those are like they're on the edge of my peripherals. Might get to them. Things that I'm for sure getting to. We'll just go to the polar opposite. These are continuations in series. With the first one, I don't have a cover for it yet or anything, but Wind and Truth. This is the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive. Currently rereading Way of Kings. And like the reread is just making me so excited. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? Like there's part of me that's apprehensive because it's the ending, and like, if is it going to stick the landing? And like Sanderson stuck 2 landings for me, so like I have a feeling it'll be okay. But something that's happened with Stormlight that I'm remembering now that I'm reading Way of Kings is it's just gotten so big, which like, of course, it's always been big, but even in Way of Kings, it was a lot more isolated and small. And now things are really big. And I have read his ending to Wheel of Time. And like, I know they weren't all his notes and stuff, but like Wheel of Time got a little bloated, and I'm just worried about bloat. I'm a little nervous about bloat, but I really did like Rhythm of War. And so I'm hoping it's more like Rhythm of War, Words of Radiance, Way of Kings, and less like Oathbringer in terms of bloat. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, if I had to pick only one new release from this year, this would probably be the one that I'd read for obvious reasons. Coming out, actually, if it's not already out, then next week, I think. What Feast at Night. This is the second book in a novella series by T. Kingfisher. The first book was like that Fall of the House of Usher retelling. I'm forgetting the name. What Moves the Dead, I think was the name. This follows a character that is the original character that was put into the Fall of the House of Usher story, I believe. It's a different scenario. I've heard mixed things, but a lot of the critiques I heard I don't think would bother me. And I just love a T. Kingfisher voicey time. So I'm pretty excited for that. This next one is like my second most exciting ending of a trilogy situation. And that's The Lotus Empire by Tasha Suri. This comes out in November. So I think this comes out like a month before Wind and Truth, which is good because like I'm gonna need that time to read this and then get to Wind of Truth. The end of this year is looking good. It's looking real good. Hopefully I will be more in my bag in terms of pacing my life so I can actually enjoy these reads, but at least this is the, the carrot situation in terms of getting me through my work weeks. So I'm really excited for this. I love the Burning Kingdom trilogy so much. It's so solid. If you read Empire of Sand and you didn't like it, same. So I guess don't let that tell you if you're going to like the Jasmine Throne or not. But also I guess the reverse is also true. If you love the Empire of Sand, I know people who've loved that and haven't really liked the Jasmine Throne, but I've also known people who've loved both. So you really just have to try it out. It's a really solid secondary world adult fantasy series, and it's so messy, and it's got all, it's just so good. And especially if you like fantasy worlds in a warmer climate, that's like something my mom's always like wanting. It's really good for that. So very excited. And then another trilogy I'm excited to have the ending of is Angel of Indian Lake. This is the Stephen Graham Jones horror trilogy, slasher influenced, inspired by, and I probably getting to that in a month. I have an arc of that, and I'm really excited to see how it ends. I'm really excited. What can I say? It's about this character, Jade Daniels, and her town, and slasher things happen. And if you know the slasher genre, you can kind of fill in the blanks. But also you can't, because like it does a really good job, I think, of keeping you on the edge of your seat in terms of like, you know what's happening, but you think you know why, but you don't know why, and it plays with that in a fun way. And then the last series continuation is The Imposition of Unnecessary Obstacles, which I am hoping has an audiobook coming out, but like I can't pre-order the audiobook, so maybe it's not having an audiobook, which would be sad. When you're seeing this video is when it's released. And like I'm hoping that suddenly it'll show up in my account and I can like get the audiobook. If not, I'll physically read it. That's fine. I just really liked the audiobook for The Mimicking of Known Successes. So it would just be a slight bummer, but I really like this Holmesian detective story. I do think that I like Holmesian stories because they tend to focus, at least the modern interpretation. I have never read an original Sherlock Holmes, but the modern interpretation is usually focused on the dynamics between these two people. The head investigator, who kind of seems societally awkward, but very intelligent, and then the kind of more heart of the investigation, like that kind of combination. It usually means that these two people are working through things either in their friendship or their romantic relationship, and that is the case here, and I eat that up. The mystery itself, I like, per normal usual, I don't really care. I don't know why like a standard mystery thing is not my thing, but the only reason my favorite procedural is Bones is because it's Holmesian and it focuses on that dynamic quite a bit, so yeah. All right, so those are the series I'm continuing with, and now let's get into the books I want to read because I have read from these authors before. First, Bride by Ali Hazelwood is already out. I'm waiting for my copy. This is like a paranormal romance. I think it's a vampire and a werewolf that have to get married, even though genetically this is not viable. I think that in this world it's not a genetically viable thing, but it's like for an alliance. So it's probably going to be contentious allies to lovers or something, and I'm here for that. Ali Hazelwood has not let me down when I've wanted a romance, so I'm excited to give it a shot. We have Those Beyond the Wall by Micaiah Johnson. This is the sequel, or at least it's a companion novel to The Space Between Worlds, which I love. I have a standalone review for that book. I love that debut so much. So this is set in a world, well, I don't know if the multiverse is going to play into this one, but the first book plays with the multiverse. But when we're ignoring the multiverse, we're in a world where we have a very well put together city. It's like almost utopian in vibe. It's really well run. It's clean. It's got resources. And then you have outside the city, which is Ash. And it's not very well run. And it's, you know, the haves and the have-nots sort of situation. And in this one, it seems like we are more in Ash this time and less in the city. And there are these mysterious deaths that keep happening. And we are following a character whose job is to keep the peace. And so now, of course, she's in this mystery thriller situation. And what I'm excited about is the first book. If you read the synopsis, you're like, oh, I'm ready for an action-packed time. And it kind of was, but it kind of wasn't. And I'm just curious what story she's going to tell this time. I trust her. I'm very curious about what story she wants to tell, how she's going to surprise me. Like, I'm ready. I have an arc of that. So that's, a lot of these I have arcs of because I'm like, I'm pretty excited about these. Similarly, The Warm Hands of Ghosts, which I'm excited about because I like Catherine Arden. I read the Winter Night trilogy and I love it. It's a very good time. This one has me nervous because I feel like I've read this book before and I'm not positive. Like, what's her name? She writes The Calculated Stars. I can't remember her name right now. But she wrote a story that's called Ghost Talkers. And it was set in World War II, and this woman is like, I think, a nurse or something, and she ends up interacting with ghosts on the field of battle for World War I. Sorry, World War I, not World War II. And this is similar in that we have a nurse, and it's World War I, and her brother, I think, dies, so she has to go to the field and, like, figure out what's happening. There's ghosts around. So, like, obviously you can do a lot more with those stories, but I really didn't like Ghost Talkers, so I'm just hoping this works better for me. We'll see. I'm basically wanting to read it because of Catherine Arden's writing style and how I have liked her character work in the past. So I'm hoping it works out, but I do know that my friend Evie has already DNF'd it, but she has higher standards than me, so hopefully I will have a fun time. All right, and then we have The Woods All Black by Lee Mandela, which I still need to read the novella from last year. It's on my Kindle. February seems to be a month of novellas for me, so maybe I'll get to that sooner rather than later. But regardless, this is, I think, a novel. And it's, once again, one of those, I think, like, Southern Gothic horror situations. And I really liked the debut. What's it called? Oh, I cannot remember now. Well, it had the two creepy hands. I can show you the cover here. And that was really good and basically made me trust this author. And I want to try it out. It looks like we have someone who's showing up to a place that they don't really know. And their job is, like, I think they're a nurse or something. And they're supposed to help keep people alive, have babies, and, like, kind of not get in the way of social affairs. But then I think things are happening and they kind of find themselves in the middle of stuff. And, like, that type of premise seems cool. Like I said, trust the author. I'm trying to lean more into horror stuff when they intrigue me. So we'll give it a shot. Next one, The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I've loved everything I've read by Robert Jackson Bennett. I've read 6 of his works, so I've read both of his trilogies. He's my go-to, like, action fantasy author. Or, like, I don't know, like, his books can become movies in my head so clearly. And they usually do have, like, a mystery premise or a heist or something that canonically works really well in, like, a movie plot. And I think this one is another mystery-focused story in a cool fantasy world. And I haven't looked into more than that because I'm like, yeah, I'll read Robert Jackson Bennett. He has really good, like, forward momentum-moving pacing for me. And I tend to be really engaged. They typically are never all-time favorites, but they are always a delightful time for me. And that's, you know, that's high praise. High praise for me. And then the last one by an author I know is The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons, who is the author of the Chorus of Dragons series, which I love. This is a standalone, which has me both nervous and excited. I don't know. I feel like I want another series by this author, so, like, that's part of it. And it's very dragon-focused, which is fine. I mean, obviously, this author likes dragons. We have the Chorus of Dragons. I'm a weirdo in fantasy where dragons are not anti-buzzword for me, but they're not like, ooh, dragons. Like, I'm not very dragon-motivated in my fantasy reading for some reason. I feel like that's a very odd thing, and that fantasy readers typically love dragons. And I like dragons, and this seems very dragon-focused. I think dragon rider relationships. It definitely has a lot of comps that are probably not true. Like, they're comparing it to both Temeraire and Fourth Wing, and I'm like, okay. Those are tonally very polar opposite books, but fine. I know you just need people to buy the book. It's okay. So yeah, I mean, I just love Chorus of Dragons by Jen Lyons, and this will be a proof of concept if I just like how she tells stories, or if what I really liked was the bonkers world building and the character work, specifically for Chorus of Dragons. So we shall see. And now I have 3 more works, we can talk about that I don't know much about at all. I haven't read anything by these authors. Actually, that's a lie. I've read a short story by one of these authors, but I can't remember which short story. Although I feel like I do, and it's going to be a dark time. We'll start with that one. And Bethany liked it, so I'm excited to try it based off that endorsement. And this is Womb City. This is a horror sci-fi. I think horror sci-fi dystopian. I think body autonomy is a huge theme and in very uncomfortable and disturbing ways. I think it has to do with childbirth or like rearing a child and stuff like that. I don't know a lot, but this author, I'm pretty sure, has written some of the darkest short stories I've ever read. So I kind of have a sense of what I'm in for here. And yeah, I think it actually is already out. I really like the cover. Like I said, I've been wanting to read more sci-fi and more horror, and this is like cyberpunk horror dystopian, and that just seems like the mood I've been in terms of what I'm trying to like switch things up. This next one, I know books that are written by this author, but I haven't read them myself, but this one is their sci-fi one, and that's Lost Ark Dreaming. And this one is supposed to be like Snowpiercer meets Get Out are the comps, and I think the Snowpiercer one makes sense, or it's not Get Out, Snowpiercer meets The Deep, I think people said. And I think what they really meant is an unkindness of ghosts, based off the synopsis I briefly looked at. Because this is like a type of post-climate sci-fi, where you have these really tall buildings and like the rich live at the really top and the have-nots live at the very bottom. So like if you've watched Snowpiercer, that's a train where the have-nots are at the far end. And then if you've read An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, that is a spaceship that is also very hierarchically divided. And yeah, I like the cover. Honestly, the cover does a lot of work. For this author in particular, the fantasy book, I believe, by this author, has these two covers, and they're so pretty. I keep not wanting to read these fantasy books because I don't think they're going to be for me because they're very questy. But this story seems very up my alley. Very sad and depressing and thematically about societies and their flaws. I'm here for that. And then the last one's a novella, and I didn't know it was a novella when I wrote it down. So I'm a little apprehensive because novellas are not always my thing, even though I've been reading more of them lately just because of time. But this is The Practice, The Horizon, and The Chain. And the reason why it got put on my list is because I think this follows a mentor-mentee relationship, which is a trope I'm a sucker for. I think there's this kid who is kind of part of the slave caste of some sort. I don't know this world yet because I haven't read it. And gets taken in by this professor and they do something together. And like, I'm a sucker for that type of relationship focus. And so of all the sci-fi I'd been hearing buzz about, this one interested me the most. So yeah, those are my pseudo-anticipated releases for 2024. Can't promise I'll get to all of them. I'm just trying to keep things on my radar. I would love in the comments if you could tell me about sci-fi and horror books in particular you think I might like coming out this next year. I do also like literary things, so if you have like a literary horror or sci-fi or speculative you want to recommend me, that's fine. Just put it down below. If you extra want me to try and like be interested in it, you can always put some blurbs, some buzzwords and stuff like that. Because I can't promise I can look up everything, but I love recommendations. And I'm trying to be a little more in the know outside of fantasy. I feel like I always know what fantasy books are coming out, but I very much don't know as much about sci-fi and horror. And I'm trying to just be more aware this year about those subgenres. If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. Let's leave. What was the book I was... Well, I guess... we should leave something wind related since that truly is my most anticipated release. I cannot be... I am basic. I am excited for that book. I've been waiting since 2010, so it's been a minute since I started that series. So something wind related, if you could, in the comments down below. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.